Please be reminded that men in uniforms may visit your home claiming they are from the water company, cable company, JPS, etc., to do some sort of inspection, work, survey, etc. Please do not let them in automatically. Criminals have been dressing as utility men and robbing people in their homes at gunpoint. Do your best to ensure that these are legitimate workmen before allowing them into your home or even into your yard. Take videos of any utility workers if you can and send them to friends and family as a safeguard. Remember, we're in the silly season. Keep safe. Be vigilant. That's the reminder that JCF has put out. I think I'll read it another time before we're through this morning. So as you go through, remember this day is important to us. December 27. December 27. Kicking off the Emancipation Wars. I want to remember this song because we should not forget. We must honor our moral obligation to remember. For us, Sankofa is not just a word. It's a liberty. And we don't just look back. For us, Sankofa explains a rear view mirror situation, okay? So we're looking back while we're going forward, and we're glancing from time to time in the rear view mirror. If we forget, we will be enslaved again. Forgetting is all about allowing ourselves to be enslaved again. And we see what's happening in the forgetting process. In South Africa, generations, 2 at least, if not 3, have forgotten apartheid. And now South Africans are turning on the very nations that helped to free South Africa from apartheid. So they talk now about xenophobia. But not only that, South Africa has returned to power and to government the most powerful of the apartheid rulers, to the ruling National Party. This is how serious forgetting is. You will repeat the mistakes of the past. A moral obligation to remember. So from time to time, we glance in the rearview mirror. We do not allow ourselves to forget, even while we go forward. Because we're going forward. Nothing going to stop that. We're going forward. But we're not about to forget how we got here, what led us here, what happened along the way, what mistakes we made, how can we correct this mistake, what are the best practices, to use one of their cliches, we can carry forward as we go forward. This is why we must honor our moral obligation. It's a moral obligation to remember. Gonna take a break. 2 years ago, I spoke with Professor Vereen Shepherd about the slave of the Zang. And Vereen Shepherd on the slaver, the Zang, leaving from Ghana, August 18, 1871, and Sao Tome, September 18, 1871. Let me go right to that. All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running Africa, and Professor Vereen Shepherd is the chair of the UN's Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, the CERD. She is a broadcaster. She's a historian, a social historian. She's currently one of the 3 vice chairs of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. And you know Professor Vereen Shepherd, so we don't have to go through everything. But suffice to say that she's on the phone lines with me this morning, going to be looking at the Zang, a massacre, a mass killing. Good morning, Prof. How are you doing?
Hi, good morning, Sister Kabu. How are you?
I am well, if you two are well.
Yes, so far so good.
All right, brilliant, brilliant. I know you've been busy because you've been in Geneva for the last few weeks, and the third has been meeting.
Yes.
How is that for a minute? Can you tell how is that going so far? Is it something you can talk about right now?
Well, I became chair this year, as you know, so I've now done 3 sessions. We call our meetings, well, there are meetings and there are sessions. So first there are sessions. There are 3 sessions per year, April, August, and November, December. And within the sessions, you have several meetings. So typically, the sessions are 3 weeks in Geneva at the Palais Wilson. And we try to have interactive dialogues with states who are signatories to the International Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. We tend to have 6 or 7 countries come before us each session. So in the last session, we had 6, including Botswana and Jamaica, Georgia. So those are, 3 of the ones, Botswana, Jamaica, and Georgia, 3 of the ones that come to mind in terms of how we conducted our dialogue. And so the next meeting is next year, April, when we'll have 7 countries coming to us. So interesting work.
Yes, and I'd like to take some time for another space, because we're going to talk about the Zong this morning, to talk to you about Jamaica coming before this third. I know you're the chair now, and but I still want to hear your own perspectives on that, and I'd like to have that discussion with you. Hopefully,
yes. So another time we can talk about that, because it's now public. The concluding observations, which are issued at the end of every interactive dialogue with states parties. That one for Jamaica is now public. In fact, all 6 that we considered are now public. So you can go to the third website and find what Jamaica has been asked to do in the aftermath of the meeting.
Brilliant. Great. So that's my next assignment on this. All right. So Prof, I mentioned the Zong this morning, but this is December. We are in the time of year when we always stop for a minute, even though it's always on our minds, to remember our ancestors, those who survived and those who were so viciously killed on the Zong. But I want, for those of our listeners, especially the young ones who are joining us, I have asked a lot of students to tune in this morning to listen to this conversation, and they are. So we are going to pretend that we have never had this discussion, Professor Shepherd, just for our students who are listening in this morning. So help us. Yes, go ahead, Vereen.
What always strikes me, and I'm writing a paper called 2 Tragedies, Same Country, Same Month, because I think about December as when the enslaved Africans in Jamaica would also have been planning the final emancipation war,
Same month, yeah.
So December is very important because of that. 2 tragedies,
and I know,
country, same month.
I'm waiting on that paper so we can have this conversation. And I know that you have raised that in this space before many moons ago. You talked about how when looking at the different wars and resistance that happen on the island, like resistance against slavery, that a lot of them seem to happen around holiday time.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Easter, crop over in August, and the holidays around Christmas and the New Year. Yes.
There's something to that.
We have noticed that not just for Jamaica, but for other Caribbean countries, yes.
Obviously speaking to the how strategic our ancestors were in noting that these were good times.
Kabu, and let me greet your listeners and viewers also. That's why we need to change the dialogue. You always talk about decolonizing the curriculum and the textbooks, and we are in that process, of course. I have been in that process for a very long time. And it's not only the language we're trying to change, but the characterization of our ancestors, because, they were they were considered chattel without any sense, without any brain, and yet we realized that these were not just spontaneous, quote unquote, uprisings. These were planned, strategic wars of resistance, and that's how we have to consider them. And even for the Zong, you know, I read in the Cornwall Chronicle, one of our early newspapers, and I was so struck. I'm now talking about this all the time. I just discovered it, that 3 of the enslaved men from the Zong, and I want to start there in terms of the fact that our ancestors never accepted enslavement uncomplainingly, and they never, regardless of the horror of the journey across the Atlantic, they continue to find ways to escape. Some drown themselves rather than suffer the indignity. 3 of them ran away from Hopewell Plantation in the west there.
Yes.
And there was an ad asking people, if they find them, to collect reward. But for me, this is so significant.
Yes.
A discovery that, you know, wow.
It is.
They must have gone to a compound.
You're so right. It is, you know, because when you think about what happened on the high seas, and that when they landed in Jamaica, they were still sold, and then my thinking has always been, wonder what happened to them eventually. And then to hear, yes, that you were able to locate 3 of them who...
At least 3 of them.
Yes. Well,
and now I realize that we should continue to look at these newspapers that advertise runaways and so on, because they always say which plantation. They sometimes give the names. I wish they had given the names. At least would have had 3 names from the ship.
Yes.
To concretely honor. But I'm going to ask the staff of the Center for Reparation Research to spend some time looking at these ads to see what we can find out.
Brilliant.
Because they named the ship on which they arrived. So, anyway.
So, Pop, let us start now at the Zong itself.
The classroom now.
Yes, so the Zong itself. First of all, situate that for me in which we mentioned this morning, the economic conditions, the geopolitical conditions that gave rise to this ship being put on the waters heading to Jamaica.
Yes, well, we're talking about 1781, so that Jamaica has already given home to captured Africans, because the trafficking in enslaved Africans started from the 15th century. So now we're in the 18th century, and many Africans have already been forcefully shipped and arrived in Jamaica. So those who arrived on the ship Zong in 1781 December were part of the overall trafficking in enslaved Africans. So I wanted to say that. So the Spanish started, and the English, then the British continued, and it never stopped until about 1811 in terms of the trafficking itself. Don't pay any attention to 1807. 1807, the act was passed in Parliament in Britain to give effect to the law to end the trafficking in enslaved Africans to the British colonized Caribbean. But they also said that if a ship was already on the high seas, they would be allowed to continue. And so it wasn't until 1811 that stopped for most what we call the CARICOM region now. But to go back, okay, so the ship Zong, as I said, one of many ships that took Africans from their homeland to the Caribbean. This particular one belonged initially to the Dutch. It was called the Zorg, and then when the Liverpool syndicate bought it from the Dutch in Ghana, I guess they mispronounced it. They called it the Zong, but initially it was ZORGUE. Now, it left. It when the ship was bought from the Dutch by the Liverpool syndicate of the three Gregson brothers and two others, the ship already had 244 Africans on board.
All right, before you go to the Africans on board, Puff, how did the Liverpool syndicate, the Gregsons, come to buy this ship? And where I want to go is to look at how the conditions in America, in terms of the war for independence, would have resulted in that ship being captured on the high seas and taken to Ghana.
Yes. Well, that was part of it because, remember that during warfare, ships change hands all the time. Some were captured and just taken, others were bought, but this particular one, the ship was already in Ghana when the Liverpool Merchant Syndicate acquired it. And remember that Liverpool was almost like the center of the trafficking in enslaved Africans. It gave rise to the growth and prosperity of Liverpool. So there were several places, several cities in the UK that benefited so much from the trafficking as well as the sale of those trafficked. And Liverpool was one of them. So this particular ship was already in West Africa when it was captured. Well, it wasn't really, it was bought. From the Liverpool syndicate, by the Liverpool syndicate, right?
Right.
And so it became now the property of William Gregson, John Gregson, James Gregson, Edward Wilson, and James Aspinall. Those were the ones. So they were already in West Africa looking for enslaved Africans. So it was very convenient for them that they managed to buy the ship to facilitate their dastardly project. So they were already on a slaving voyage in the area of Cape Coast and Anamabu. And so they bought this impounded ship, the Zong, from the Dutch, and because the Dutch had impounded it as you mentioned, in the process of warfare, and so they now outfitted and provided the rest of the financial outlay for this Zong to be part of that system that brought so much economic growth and prosperity to Liverpool. And in fact, so viable was the shipping enterprise to them, to Liverpool, that by 1780 it was estimated that as many as 85 slavers, people call them slave ship, I call them slavers, left Liverpool for the West African coast. You know? So that's the context and background.
Yes.
That these merchants and individuals from across the world, not just Britain, but in this case we're talking about Britain, they were involved in the trafficking because their countries, the state gave legal protection to them to be able to do this. They provided the scaffolding for this kind of trafficking.
Yes, and as you pointed out, as you were saying earlier, at the time that the Liverpool syndicate, the Gregsons, bought this ship from the Dutch, that they now had, that already there were enslaved Africans.
That's right.
On what they were now calling the Zong.
Yes, 244 of them.
244.
And I'm thinking that, they would have had to stay. We don't know how long they were in the hold of the ship when it changed hands, but they had to stay back there more weeks until they, acquired the number of Africans that they considered they needed to make a profitable journey. So these Africans, the rest of the Africans were bought in the area of Cape Coast and Accra and placed on board. I think it took like 5 months for them to outfit the ship the way they wanted and for it to set sail.
So by the time the Zong was ready to sail, it had how many enslaved Africans now?
Now, again, we are not sure the figures vary. We know it was over 400. Some sources say 440. Some sources say 442. Some sources say 470. So we don't know where to settle, but we usually use 442 because most sources, including Professor James Walvin's book, which is called The Song, he uses 442. So we have tended to use 442. And so the enslaved people would have been captured from places that now we would call the Gold Coast, which is part of modern-day Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. And more specifically, we would say they were kidnapped from places like Adja, which is ADJA, then Aga, which is AGGA, and Anamabu, right? And the whole of that Cape Coast and surrounding hinterland of West Africa's Gold Coast, which I'm saying is now part of modern-day Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. So
probably going all the way to Togo.
Exactly. And they were part of this, you know, most historians are now saying 15 million Africans, but they were part of that larger trafficking in the enslaved Africans. We will never know the number because they, you know, of the way record keeping was.
And as we saw in the Zang, how records were destroyed, and we'll probably talk about that later. Exactly.
So now we know that after 5 months of, you know, staying there after they bought it and outfitting it and so on, the ship now set sail on the 18th of August, 1781.
Yes.
And normally, before the Atlantic crossing or the Middle Passage, there were several revictualling stops along the way. This time they stopped at Sao Tome on the coast of West Africa.
Yes.
And they would have taken on supplies and so on. So on the 6th of, if we are tracking it, and somebody should, maybe with somebody, I guess the center should do a map of the journey.
Yes.
So we're now at Sao Tome, and they left there on the 6th of September, 1781. Right?
Now we see the direction, because that is southerly? Southerly direction.
In fact, they went too far south, which is why the journey took 107 days. So, and they took on more Africans than they ought to for the size of the ship, by the way.
Right.
The ship was 110 tons, and from what Professor Walvin says, a ship of 110 tons should not have had more than 200 people on board. Well, he says specifically 193.
So, in other words, the 244 enslaved Africans that they had on it when they bought their ship would have been the capacity, overcapacity anyway.
Exactly.
And yet you added another 200 and other, probably more.
Exactly.
Yes. Wow. You know, can you imagine the conditions?
I know. So they took on more people than they ought to. And when I say that, I'm only saying that because as a historian, I have to tell the facts of the case, right?
Yes, of course.
Just to say it like that sound like, oh my God.
I know.
Not even one person should have been on the ship. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But for the sake of the students, I'm just giving the facts as we know them from those who have written on it. So the journey was slow, we understand, and it sailed further south than most slavers did in the 18th century. So that's why after about 10 weeks after leaving Sao Tome, it arrived in Tobago, realizing it was not Jamaica, it's Tobago. Then it now had to take back its course for Jamaica.
And that's far when you look at it, you know, from Trinidad to Jamaica. Yes.
So Professor Walvin said that it was like between Tobago and Jamaica, it was like 100 weeks, you know.
So this was navigational error. Do we know?
Because from what we understand, there was a lot of navigational error because the captain, Collingwood himself, was inexperienced, and so was the crew. They were just hastily gathered.
The motley crew. So and that takes us back to when it was sold, because and this is a point to raise, you know, that when it was sold, there wouldn't have been a crew for it unless you're going to use the same Dutch crew.
Exactly. So some of them were even just hastily acquired because there were soldiers and sailors in West Africa.
Yes.
European ones. Because sometime when the ships arrived in West Africa, some of them got leave, they went on shore, you know, and
they had a lot of forts. And Puff, they had a lot of forts, don't they? They had
a motley crew, as you say.
Yes. So you can just imagine that they were backing and forthing because they had the Cape Coast dungeons, they had Elmina, they had Marble, and so on. So they were literally backing and forthing. So I put them just and another thing, Verena, that it's a little bit on a side because I used to read a lot of romance books back in my day, those that come out of the UK especially. And I remember, a lot of these would be set in some debtor's jail where people were pulled from the debtor's prison and put on these ships. These slavers, I'm realizing now, much later on, that were going into the Caribbean.
Yes.
I mean, I was reading books as romance novels.
Yes, exactly, because, of course, people wrote all kinds of things using their
romanticizing
disciplinary interest to write about tragic incidents,
Yes, yes.
And it didn't mean as much to them as to us in terms of what they were writing, where they were just writing a poem or a book. And in fact, now we realize that a lot of these, even the poets that we use in schools, the poetry books we used and the poems, these were people who were in universities in the UK and who were kind of pro-slavery.
Yes.
And
these families were also involved because, we read Mark Twain, for example, that's taking it to another place. But even when you look at Mark Twain and Huckleberry Finn and all of them, Mark Twain argued seriously for slavery. And then you look at Jane Austen, we were reading Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
But in Pride and Prejudice, I remember there's a line that says, somebody's in the islands or something like that. They're in the colonies, they called it. And we glossed over that. We had no teacher to say, well, you're doing this book, but this reference to colonies had to do, this person was an enslaver.
Exactly. And when another time, I suppose you and I can talk about the Cambridge University report.
Yes.
Taking responsibility or showing how the various colleges and the dons, as they call them, those are the lecturers, their own role. So even if they didn't own enslaved Africans or took part in the shipping and the chattelization, because there were dons in these universities and they were writing poetry and teaching classes. Their own racism, they spread the ideology of pro-slavery.
Yes.
And that's what is coming out in this report. But that's what
I can't wait. Here we are. I can't wait to have that conversation, to read that document
June,
and have it.
Next year, February, we're having one of the researchers who was hired to put that report together. She's coming to Jamaica.
Brilliant.
And so we can have that. I'm going to have a public event.
Yes.
To have her walk us through it and for people to ask her questions about it.
Brilliant. All right, Prof, hold a line for me, Prof, because we go back to the zone, but let me take a quick break.
Okay.
Editorial note in real time, because I gave some dates this morning and every one of them just out of whack. And so I want to thank my sister Aldith for understanding the assignment and wrote to me to say, listen, morning sis, looked up some dates for you. The arrival of the Zong in Jamaica, 1781. Abolition of slavery, 1838. Assassination of Kennedy, 1963. So we have to put these in context. Thank you so much, Aldith. Assassination of Kennedy is right. The Warren Commission report came out of the assassination, and it was on the back of the Warren Commission report that the whole conspiracy theorist debacle happened, where they started talking about people are conspiracy theorists if they questioned something. So they were questioning the assassination, but that came out of the Warren Commission, so that was by 1967. Thank you so much, Aldith. And then, thank you so much for the dates, correction on the dates with the Zong, because that is very important. I think our ancestors from the Clotilda came forward, and I just put two ships in one. So when I spoke about the Zong earlier, I said mark the date because this is after emancipation. Really and truly, this is a Clotilda. And that's a whole different ship, and we'll talk about it another time. We've spoken about it before. So you're hearing the discussion with Vereen Shepherd and myself. You're getting the dates, you're understanding when this happened. So the point I raised earlier was really to do with the Clotilda. The Clotilda was the last known slaver to bring enslaved Africans to the United States, and it sank. So ancestors from the Clotilda came forward, and this is why in my head those two ships just became one. So we're going to return to Professor Vereen Shepherd. My very special guest online is Professor Vereen Shepherd. We're talking this morning about the Zong. 1781, a mass murder happened on one of these slavers, which we call slave ships, but we're learning now to correct the language. So these are slavers. The Zong that was heading to Black River, a mass murder happened, a massacre happened. It landed in Black River on December 22. We're talking about that. We're getting to Black River. So, Prof, sometime in the journey, this was now, where we're now, November we're in now?
So we're now at when they get back on course for Black River, having gone, veered off course to Baker. But they veered off course again before reaching Black River because they veered off course near Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
And they lost time there and then got back on the course for Jamaica. So
this captain is interesting about the captain. So who was captaining the ship?
Luke Collingwood, but they say he was an inexperienced captain, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And as we said before, the crew was hastily assembled. Some of them already, most of them already in the area of Ghana.
I read that he was a surgeon.
There was a surgeon on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So Collingwood
himself
was not the surgeon. The chief mate was James Kelsall. Collingwood was the captain, but there was also a surgeon.
Okay.
On the ship, and there was also a free person, Robert Stubbs.
A passenger. Somebody used it.
Stubbs. When Collingwood fell ill, Robert Stubbs had to take over the ship. And he was a former slaver captain anyway. Mm-hmm. So he would have known how to fit in, you know?
So Robert Stubbs was a passenger, like a cruise ship situation he was on in a female.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Wow.
So I don't know why he was coming to Jamaica. So that I have not been able to research sufficiently. So but it interests me who was this Robert Stubbs, you know?
Yes.
But he was a former. He was in that job right at that time. He was a former.
He was a former captain.
So maybe him coming to Jamaica for some reason, you know. But there were 19 crew members, and the first mate was James Kelsall, the second mate Joseph Wood, and the captain was Collingwood. But all sources say that he was inexperienced.
Yes.
He was not surgeon on this particular ship, is what I was trying to say.
Okay.
But he was previously the surgeon on a slaver called William. Yes.
And that is another ship that was owned by the Liverpool Syndicate.
Yes, as well. Yes. So after they managed to get back on course, after veering off course near Haiti, they got back on course. But by then, of course, because the journey is so long now, there were complaints of water shortage and illness and death among the crew and poor navigational and leadership decisions. So there was a general air of confusion on this journey. And added to that, by the end of November 1781, about 62 Africans died from diseases and malnutrition. So the death rate became higher. You know, it was about. In fact, the mortality rate on this ship was 53%, way above what we have been told was the average. You know,
yes,
which was between 10 and 20%.
So this is a death ship from you know,
exactly.
before. And you mentioned how long the ship would have been in Accra, even, you know, when it was impounded. And enslaved Africans would have been on that.
We're talking about, you know, a death rate of 53%. It wasn't the highest, but it was high for that stage of the trafficking. Yes. But it wasn't the highest because, you know, 1732 we had the San Michel with a 96% mortality rate. And there was one called the Providence to Jamaica. All these are to Jamaica that I'm talking about. Yes. 81%, the Alpine 70%, the East India Merchant 70%. So these are high death rates on the ships to Jamaica. And this one, not the highest, but high enough. It should not have happened. So 62 dying from diseases and so on. And I'm assuming there's nobody has said that, but I am assuming that the 244, these 62 must have come from the 244.
And that's what I was alluding to earlier when I said how long it would have been in port, because to think, you know, the conditions there, and as you said, how long they were there, nobody even knows.
Nobody knows how long they were there, but we know that they were 5 months there longer.
Yes.
Than when they were put there.
It's a heart-rending
They said that everything about this journey was just terrible, and water short, ration short. That's what they claim. So the decision was taken then to jettison some of the Africans. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yes, go ahead, because we have another 5 minutes before we go to another break. Although, I suppose I can't do that because these are sponsors. But all right. So, but the thing though, Vereen, I don't like the word jettison.
Yeah, well, you know why we use jettison? Because it shows the crime.
Okay.
But we also use deliberately drowned.
Yes.
Murdered.
Yes.
Yes. But from the legal point of view, they argued that. So if we're not talking about it, so let's forget the legal term and say they were murdered. Because that's how we call massacre. That's why we talk about the Zang massacre.
Yes.
It was a massacre. And you're quite correct to say that.
Yes.
It was a murderous plan that they you know.
What was the plan? What was and the crew, captain and crew, conceived of a murderous plan. What was the plan?
Yes, because they call them together and say, what we're going to do. If we don't do something, they said, we are going to threaten the profitability of the journey. Because apparently, during that period, right, they had to try to reduce the losses from the owners. So apparently, if the voyage, if people died by natural means, right, the insurance would not count those people. So they're not.
So you can't claim insurance money if the enslaved African who you hijack and kidnap and have there died of all of that. They call that natural means.
Exactly. And not only that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they said, well, you know, that's the fault of the people who the crew. You didn't pay enough attention. These people are casualties of this of the journey, so we're not paying insurance on them. However, if they could claim that they had to save the voyage. I don't want to call it voyage, you know. I don't even know what to call it. Illegal kidnapping and shipping.
Yes, I know the difficulty you're having, Professor Vereen, but I'm not lying to you. I'm having the very same one.
Yes, so, trying to find the words that means something more to us than to them, you know.
Because this isn't a cruise ship. This is not a voyage.
It's not a cruise. It's not a voyage. So it's a journey of this, you know, slaver.
Yes.
So if the slavers, if the people who own the ship, captain and so on, and the owners can prove that to make a profit, then let us say, they had to take a certain action so that the insurance companies would pay. And we have seen this on other ships, by the way. You know, so that's what they decided to do.
But you know what I'm wondering?
They didn't want to threaten the profitability of the journey. They didn't want any more enslaved Africans to die.
Yes. Yes.
So they decided that since they're not people, according to them, these are not people, it is cargo. So if they can claim that they had to lose some of the cargo to save the rest of the
rest of them.
I don't know. The rest of what
the rest of the crew, and the crew was
of their illegal action.
Yes.
Then they could claim insurance.
All right. So to back up just a minute, because I'd interrupted you. One of the reasons, or the main reason why they're having this conversation is that them went off course twice, but by the time they're trying to figure their way back now to Black River, which is where they're heading, they notice that there is that water run out and so on. So they were. Right, this is what they claim, that they had no water. They didn't have enough water.
They didn't have enough water for crew, for the people on board, who they didn't call people, and they didn't have enough rations.
Yes, and our students must understand that they were referring to us, to Africans, enslaved Africans on that slaver, and that's what you call that slave ship, on that slaver, as cargo. As cargo, so they didn't see them as human beings.
That's right. That's right. And so the chief mate, according to what the chief mate said, he was Colonel James Kelsall. During he had to make a deposition about this when it came to court. He outlined how Collingwood met with the crew to outline that murderous plan. So, according to what they planned, and they put in operation at 8 p.m. on the 29th of November 1781, they drowned 54 enslaved Africans, mainly women and children. They dragged them from below deck. They took off the shackles from the women and the children, and they heaved them from the ship through the cabin window, one by one. Through the cabin window. Awful.
Yes.
Then 2 days later, on the 1st of December, 42 men were thrown overboard, handcuffed and in irons from the quarterdeck. You see?
Yes.
They unshackled the women and the children because they figure them can't fight back, which is not true, by the way, because we have evidence that they did on other ships, slavers fight back.
Yes.
But I guess they are thinking that they can't swim back on board or something.
And they were throwing them out one by one through small ports, through windows. So I suppose they unshackle them as they put them out.
Yes.
You know.
But on the other hand, they had to they did the same thing with the men in terms of throwing them one by one overboard. But
they kept on the chains.
And put them in iron, right?
And Vereen, let us stop a minute, Prof, because they're doing this to people who are alive.
Yes. No. And when you say that, I'm reminded that they routinely threw people overboard, but bodies, dead people. They would routinely throw them overboard if they died. Because, even though in this case some of the dead people who died from diseases and so on, the dead Africans, were still on board the ship when it arrived in Black River, but generally they would throw them overboard if they died. But these are human beings. These are live people, men and women, or ancestors
and children.
And so the 1st of December now, if we want to track it, 42 men were thrown overboard, handcuffed and in irons from the quarterdeck. And then a third batch, 38 murdered later on. Now, for us it's important to know that they struggled, Many of the Africans struggled. And that's why the crew tied iron balls to their ankles to drown them. And
they would have been resisting in terms of the physical, but also vocally. So people, they would have heard each other. Those below deck waiting to be murdered would have heard those who were being murdered.
And in fact, because of that, 10 men threw themselves overboard in what has been described as an act of defiance.
Yes.
They say, all right, I see what you're all doing.
Yes.
You're not going to push me.
Right.
And of course, on other journeys, Africans, threw themselves overboard rather than endure the conditions on board and so on. And this uncertain life. So, and one man Professor Walvin tells us that one man,
Yes.
he must have been among those who initially were unshackled, in the first lot, scrambled back on board to plead with the crew to stop the killings.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. All right, Puff. So here we are at the place where a decision was taken to murder. It looks like it's about half of the enslaved Africans.
Yes, and it didn't stop there, because after that 38, and this one man scrambled back. He was pushed back out, of course, because they didn't listen to him. And 36 more died before the ship reached Jamaica. So we're talking about a high death rate, which is what I said before, that, it was really a high death rate. And when it arrived, it had 208. Remember, we are saying that an outside number of 470 would have embarked, or would have been put on board forcefully.
Yeah.
So, no, again, why Black River? Some people have asked me, Black River, but I didn't know ships arrived at Black River. No, remember, it's a comparatively large island of Jamaica, and while the majority were put on ashore at Kingston Harbor, many other ports around the island were used, right? And Black River could accommodate the slavers. So, and it was, for them, it was considered easier than having to have carts from Kingston transporting Africans to the west. So those who would have disembarked, forcefully put ashore at Black River, would have not necessarily stayed in St. Elizabeth.
Yes.
But in fact, the Cornwall Chronicle says that by the 9th of January 1782, 200 of the survivors had been advertised for sale, right? And so they were sold to plantations from Trelawney, Hanover, St. James, St. Elizabeth. So 208 only arrived alive, which means that the mortality was like 232 or something like that.
Yes.
And, it just was, they were advertised for sale. Now, again, there's controversy over the date. The Professor Eltis has done something called slavevoyages.org 2.0. 2018. He says the 28th of December is when it arrived. But James Walvin says 22nd. So we had been using 22nd, but it doesn't matter. What happened.
We know it was towards the end of December, between the 22nd and the 28th.
Exactly.
So either way.
So this is a tragic, really tragic, happening in Jamaican history.
Yes.
It is of global concern. And what I want to say is not the first time they had pushed people overboard.
Right. And that's a question that we must raise in this space is, was this unusual, or was this more or less the norm?
I think it was the most tragic that we have read about in terms of the action of just deliberately throwing live people overboard. But in 1819 there was a case on a French ship called La Rodure, or the Prowler, when they threw 39 blind Africans overboard.
So I wonder if they were blind before they kidnapped them and brought them on board.
No, they contracted a disease.
Yes.
They call it an outbreak of ophthalmia. Which causes blindness. Sometimes temporary, sometimes permanent. So the captain feared that the blindness would become permanent, and he said that blind slaves would be difficult, if not impossible, to sell. Enslaved Africans who were blind.
Yes.
So he just threw 39 of them over the rails to their watery death.
And so I will see, as you're pointing out, the Zong, we are talking about over 200 people that they would have killed.
I think it's the greatest tragedy in terms of deliberately throwing people overboard.
But to note also, Prof, how does this fit in with the insurance claims now that you mentioned earlier? What's interesting, though, is at what point did the syndicate, the Gregson syndicate, the Liverpool syndicate, insure this ship?
Yes, so because they didn't leave Liverpool with this Zang, you know, they left Liverpool with other ships.
Okay.
But this must have been, I mean, they had a network, you know.
Well, yes.
Yes, so they would have insured it once they acquired it.
Right. And how were they insured? Each enslaved African was insured to the tune of what?
£30 per head. £30 sterling per head. Because, you know how we know that? If you were back to the insurance claim, it says that the insurance initially taken out of the ship included £8,000 sterling for the captive alone. And that's about £30 sterling per enslaved African. So this comes out at the trial.
Yes. Okay.
That, they were claiming for the loss of quote-unquote property, the dead enslaved Africans, and the insurance taken out, we know now, initially taken out on the ship included $8,000 for the captives alone. It would have been higher for like the ship and the whatever. But on the captives, £30 sterling per head. And
all right,
those who were sold in Jamaica were sold for about 36 per head.
Just to let you know what's happening today, December 22, 2024 marks the 243rd memorial of the arrival of the British slaver, the Zang, arriving in Black River in 1781. And we're listening to this conversation I had with Professor Vereen Shepherd 2 years ago on the Zang. And part of this is our moral obligation to remember. Very gory indeed, just listening to what was done to our ancestors on these slavers. We're going to continue the conversation in a little while. The Clotilla keeps coming to the fore because I mentioned that I made a mistake earlier by putting these two ships in one, the Zang and the Clotilda, and I have at least 5 questions asking me for more information on the Clotilda. So ancestors come. You're doing your thing. You come. Well, the Clotilda was an 86-foot schooner, and it was a slaver. It arrived in 1860, decades after the Atlantic trade in Africans. The Ma'afa was outlawed. The ship's owners burned and scuttled in to hide evidence of the crime and to escape prosecution. We have done programs on this before and we'll return to it. But because the ancestors are coming as they are coming, we're just taking it as it come. We're talking about the Zang. Jamaica, remember the Zang. This date, December 22, is important on this island, even as we are reading about the bloodshed, the ongoing bloodshed, and how morbid we have become as a nation. One of the reflections, I think, and not just reflecting, but also a decision that must be taken, is how we continue to honor the memories of our ancestors. And what do we do at the end of the day to ensure that we're honoring our ancestors and ourselves at the same time, but within the context of recognizing the tragedies, the harshness, the murders, the massacres. Because I think we have to come to some decision as a people as to how we view these events, what we do with the information, the knowledge and the knowing, and how to ensure that it doesn't happen again, whether it's happening on the slaver or it's happening on the plantation, which now is Jamaica. I'm going to come back to that. Right after that, we'll return to the conversation we're having with Professor Vereen Shepherd, an interview on the Zong Massacre, 1781. The Zong leaving Ghana, losing its way, heading to Jamaica. And this morning, we are honoring our moral obligation to remember those of our ancestors who were so viciously murdered on the Zong, the slave of the Zong. That slaver arrived in Jamaica on December 22, 1781, Black River, St. Elizabeth. 2 years ago, I had a conversation with Professor Vereen Shepherd about this slaver, about our African ancestors who were on board, kidnapped and viciously murdered, and about the aftermath. We return to that conversation. We recall and remember our ancestors who were so violently, viciously murdered. This was a murder secret. I want to go back to Professor Vereen Shepherd, who we're talking to about this slaver, what you know as a slave ship, the politically correct term for these monstrosities on the seas. Are not no ships, they're slavers. That's what we're calling them. And remember, we're not calling each other slaves. We're saying enslaved Africans. All right? We're not taking on no slave to ourselves. Our ancestors were enslaved. And so get the words. It's going to take a while, I know, for these words, our tongues to become comfortable with some of these words. You heard Professor Vereen Shepherd and myself. We're still struggling to find words for what the ship do, what the slaver do when it dip on the sea. Is it a voyage or what? It's a murderous journey. And so we're still trying to find the correct term. So it's a process for us. And just so we learn from each other. So Professor Shepherd is back with me.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
Good morning again, and to you and your listeners and viewers.
Yes, so just to quickly, recap some of the last things we said, which was that over 200 of our ancestors were murdered.
Yes.
And then that the slaver got into Black River between December 22 and 28.
Yes. Let's just say within that period.
Yes.
But as we said, yes. So let's just remember that some of them died from diseases and malnutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Over 100, and then on over 100 again, pushed to their death.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, because we must talk about our Africans who are dying on board from disease,
yes.
from diseases, because
yes.
it's the conditions in which they were forced.
Conditions were horrible.
To live.
Yeah.
And then you talk about malnutrition.
Yes. It's just a horrible story. And when I hear that song, I also remember Aitawe with his song Overload,
Mm-hmm.
which
yes.
just is so
I wish I had that.
reminiscent
I'm going to check it to see if I
of what happened. It's just, I applaud our artists, Kabu, and the historians who have written, artists who have painted, poets like Norbracy Phillips who have captured it in poetry, using all means necessary to ensure, film.
Yes.
That we don't forget. And the horror, this was one of the most horrible ones, I think. But I can't forget also reading that on Thursday, the 30th of May 1795, I'll just read it from the Royal Gazette, another newspaper in Jamaica. On Thursday, an inquest was held on the corpse of a Negro, which had been thrown ashore between two wharves at the west end of Port Royal Street. The jurors were of the opinion that the body had been slung from a Guinness ship, and the coroner took their verdict accordingly. So many times we read about our ancestors. And I want to mention also, because we're hearing about the Dutch government wanting to apologize is Suriname
tomorrow,
and those countries which I call colonies, but they call overseas territories. I call them colonies. No, I want to say clearly, those are not the only victims of what the Dutch did, because I recall how if those of us who watched Enslaved with Samuel L. Jackson will remember all the other instances they gave of ships committing dastardly acts, and the Dutch ship, the Luciden, sank with more than 700 Africans, deliberately sealed in the hold before the captain and the crew abandoned the ship.
Yes.
They got into difficulties. They didn't want to release the enslaved Africans, 700 of them. They sealed them in the hold, and then the captain and crew jumped ship and left the 700 Africans to die. So I want to remind the Dutch in this space, you have a lot more to answer for than Suriname and your Dutch colonies.
Exactly.
And they should take more time with this apology, because they are going to get more criticism than praise for this apology. I have said it, and I won't take it back.
All right. We agree with everything you said there regarding that apology that is supposed to come up tomorrow, actually, the 19th. The Netherlands apologizing for its role in slavery, but not really. As you heard, Professor
and not committing to reparation in the way we are saying reparation.
All right, so Prof, let us now look at this murderous act on within Caribbean waters when you think of it, because you're seeing Jamaica, you're seeing Tobago, you're seeing Haiti. So you're in Caribbean waters. This murderous act. Oh
you're
boy. Right. This would have remained, as Waldron has said, a secret. A murderous secret, just another one, some of those you named earlier, where others were thrown overboard. Had it not been for the audacity of these narcissistic sociopaths who then turned around to claim insurance on those that they had murdered. Helbert, talk us through that claim.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me say, first of all, that as you know, I'm not a lawyer. So the intricacies of the legal case, I can't argue. I can only say to you that at the end of the dastardly act, the owners dared to claim insurance, and they wanted to claim insurance on the people they had pushed to their death, right? So the initial case was heard in Guildhall in March 1782, where Gregson argued that the Zong had not had enough water to sustain both crew and the enslaved, and therefore they had to make a decision to drown what they call, to throw overboard those they call cargo, but we know that was not so. So the insurance underwriter was Thomas Gilbert, and that is why the case was called Gregson versus Gilbert, right? And so Thomas Gilbert, the insurance underwriter, disputed the claim, saying that the Zong was because they had to take evidence from the crew that survived, that the Zong had 420 gallons of water aboard when it reached Jamaica, and people went on board to inspect it and take an inventory. And also, apparently, rain fell along the journey. In fact, the day before they started to throw people overboard, apparently there had been a shower of rain. So the insurers, and by the way, I am not applauding the insurers. Let me just be clear.
Point to be made.
Imagine that there was a business of insuring people.
Yes.
I condemn them also.
And I want to get to them. And I know as a historian, you can help us to understand who were some of these people who
Lloyds
were...
of London.
Lloyds of London.
Lloyds of London. They insured, slavers. So they had come out to apologize, but nothing has happened since then because we're not holding them responsible.
So we're getting with these apologies. I think they have realized, as the Netherlands and Lloyds and a lot of what we see happening in the United States, that apology gets you in the newspaper, and so it's a gaslighting.
Yes, but there are not enough in the movement.
Yes.
If there were enough of us, if the whole island of Jamaica, for example, was on board of this, looking at these tragedies as evidence for reparation, if there were enough of us, we would be in a movement and they could never escape. But there are not enough of us. But anyway,
I agree. But there's a critical mass and we continue to do what we do. All right, so Puff.
So we have to do what we have to do. The Center for Reparation, I saw somebody saying that the Center for Reparation Research should do more than put this information out because we're going to publish a pamphlet. I say to those people, you in your corner do what you can do.
Yes, everybody has their purpose.
That's right. Our mandate is to research and engage in advocacy, public education, which we are doing. Other people who are artists and so on, make song, paint, write poetry. Do something.
Singers and players of instruments.
Is what I'm saying.
And activists and whoever you are. So listen. So
anyway, the insurance underwriter, Thomas Gilbert, disputed it. Said there was water when the inventory was taken on the ship before people or put on ashore, and that rain fell.
And just to back up a bit, just to remind our students listening that this was raised because the Liverpool syndicate, Gregson, they were arguing that they threw these Africans, that they massacred these Africans because they did not have enough water.
That's right.
So then
for everybody.
Right. So then if rain did fall, then it means that you'd have at least collected water.
Yes, and then because when the ship arrived in Black River, as I said, whoever went on board to take the inventory said 420 gallons of water was on board.
Right.
So despite this, the jury in 1782 under William Murray, the Earl of Mansfield, who was the Lord Chief Justice of the King's Bench, at his direction, in 1782 in the first trial, he
shepherd 2 years ago, the massacre, the Zong massacre. We return to that. All right. So we had the claim, the argument in court that was an insurance claim with the argument in court that these weren't even humans that were thrown overboard. Lord Mansfield himself. Yes, exactly. Yeah, talk to us about Lord Mansfield because he said something in that trial that you mentioned in this space before when we had this conversation.
I mean, everybody talks about him as bringing justice to freed blacks in England in 1772.
Oh well, anyway, I don't
But
my own views on that.
In this first case, he said that the case before the jury was whether it was necessary that the Africans were thrown into the sea, for they had no doubt that the case of slaves, I hate to use that word, but I'm quoting, was the same as if horses had been thrown overboard.
This is Lord Mansfield.
Yes.
This is the Lord Mansfield.
We have to realize that by the time the case came back again, right? Olaudah Equiano.
Yes.
And Granville Sharp and other anti-slavery activists had heard about it.
Yes.
And so I believe the judgment that was eventually given so the insurance didn't have to pay because they ruled in favor of the insurers the second time.
Right. So
I believe that was because of the activism, the intensification of the anti-slavery movement. So we have to think about Equiano, who, of course, was, kidnapped and sold from an area called Nigeria now. And I think people, that's a separate story. They have to go look it up. Olaudah Equiano, but he was in the UK.
Yes, and I want to talk about that activism from Equiano. You know what I find interesting, Vereen, is that we went to the same high school. I don't know if you did book up Equiano in high school, but we were reading but we read about him at St. Mary High. By the time, but listen. Yesterday I was preparing for this program and I got up, from on my dining table and look out through the window, upon the sky. And I said to myself, what if when we were reading Equiano in literature, we were guided or that we had gone off on our own research on who really was Equiano.
Yes.
Because he came up in the literature. We had the stories, we were reading from his diaries and so on, but it meant nothing. We could not connect him back to anything.
No context to what you were reading.
No context. We would have known about the Zong.
Yes. In my time, remember I went to school long before you.
Yes.
We didn't learn about, we did slavery, but not in any detail. And I remember one of the teachers got annoyed with me because I said, "How you know that?" And South African tell you so?
No, I needed to laugh.
And that's when I became, I have to say, I became interested in history from that teacher anyway, because at least she was teaching about slavery. But the context, it was just like, you know, a normal class. It didn't have emotion. And they were just saying those things. And I'm saying, what's the evidence? What is your evidence?
Yes.
But who tells me to go ask, what is your evidence as a child?
Oh, goodness.
And that's why I think I've become a historian. I wanted to know where they find this information, and is there more to what I was being taught? You know, so context is important,
it's very important
because everybody. You realize that Granville Sharp has gotten more attention than Equiano in this case.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much about Granville Sharp.
But Equiano was important in bringing the case to the attention of Granville Sharp and other anti-slavery activists.
Sharp himself was at pains to point out that this was brought to his attention by Equiano, and how closely they worked together.
Yeah. We need to, a lot of times, and you know that we have been in the business of highlighting the icons of the anti-slavery movement, including those on the ground. In fact, more importantly, those on the ground in the Caribbean, because they never stopped. They didn't have to hear about the Zong to you know, fight against slavery. We know that from the moment of capture and shipment. In fact, in Africa, there was resistance. On board at the barracoons, there was resistance. On the ship, resistance. On arrival, resistance. So they run away, some of them.
Yes.
And from, you know.
And what I found interesting, Professor Shepherd, is that and I think it's in Walvin, I'm not so sure, so let me just say that he references how, in talking about the Zong, how the crew would have been briefed on every slaver. And just from that briefing, and I don't think he went there, but just from that briefing, though, the inference from that is, okay, so then resistance was the norm on these slavers. Because if the crew were briefed that, listen, you have to put up a wall right here, sir.
Exactly.
You're going to have to go through this little point. And you can't take your eyes off the women who you're raping. Because once you've sexually assaulted them, they themselves are going to turn around and take knives or spoons or whatever from your space and hand it to the males, and then because I read that and I said, but basically what this is saying is that it's evidence of resistance on these slavers.
Because if you're going to take those measures, on every single slaver, it means you know that you're not going to have a smooth journey. You know, you're going to have to become a non-human because they themselves became non-human. They are the ones who became non-human. Because, to do those dastardly things. Yeah,
how do you become what you weren't born as? You are who you are. These are devils. Yes. Sorry, if there's such a thing.
So apparently another trial was even ordered, like an appeal, but Walvin said it never took place. Yes. But what we know is that the owners lost the case.
All right. So that is the point to underscore, is that there was a first trial where it's a jury trial. The jury was, what them call the word that the judge to the jury, but instructed the jury, and the jury came back with the verdict that the insurers should pay. Yes. So Lord Mansfield was very much involved in that because he instructed the jury. Right. And then, so there was an appeal by the insurers, as you pointed out, and you're saying this is not because they were good; it's because they just didn't want to pay out the money. So there's nothing they did that was especially great, because they were insuring Africans as cargo anyway.
Yes. Because prior to 1783, there were various test cases surrounding the legalities of African chattel enslavement, and that took place under English law. And for a while, the legal community had endured the what you call the metamorphosis of the quote-unquote Trover principle in law, which at first held that Africans were infidels, therefore property.
Yes.
And later it was held that Africans were no longer chattel and slave, but their rights were limited to that of a villain. And there were many cases involved in that. So, you know, when Mansfield presided over the case, he would have been renowned for the Somerset case, but at the same time, you know, in this particular case, he ruled that they weren't property and ruled in favor of the insurers.
Yes, and he himself had said that the Somerset case was misunderstood. That people it didn't go far either, because while for him it was a singular thing. The Somerset case, it wasn't precedent. They couldn't use it in America.
And then so in the first trial, now the issue was that the Liverpool syndicate should pay a sum of £3,660 to the owners.
For those
that insurers should pay the Liverpool syndicate.
How much? How much?
A sum of £3,660.
£3,660.
Yeah, because the issue was whether the act of throwing enslaved Africans overboard due to a lack of water supply was an absolute necessity to save the others. And so that's what happened. But the appeal in 1783 may heard other perspective.
Yes.
You know.
And in terms of so you mentioned that they lost the Liverpool syndicate, Gregson's, that they lost the case, and you also said that there was no second trial.
No, there must have been a second trial because but when what Professor is saying, Richardson, is that there was an appeal even to the second case.
Oh, okay.
That's what he seems to be saying.
Okay.
So,
but there's
anyway, the end result is that, as far as we know, no insurance
was paid.
Payout was made.
Okay, hold the line for me, please, Verena. Quick break. With the argument in court that, these weren't even humans that were thrown overboard. Lord Mansfield himself, goodness. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're going to have to, just give me a minute there. Let me sort myself out. So my bad, taking it from the beginning again. So let's do this.
Richardson, is that there was an appeal even to the second case.
Oh, okay.
That's what he seems to be saying.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Sunday mornings is listening to Running Africa anyway.
Yeah, so brilliant.
This is your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because we want to wrap this up, because, especially for our students, our younger people, and even for adults who are listening who have never heard of the Zong, because we know many people have never heard of the Zong, never heard that this took place.
Yes.
All right, so...
But we could talk about what we do with this.
Yes.
This memory.
So all of this. So this is where I want to go now. So so this is 1780s. It's a dastardly, as you said before, act. It's a murderous act played out in the courts in England. But slavery continued.
Slavery continued. But the thing is, based on the activism on both sides, on all sides of the Atlantic, let's say, Olaudah Equiano, Otoba Kogwana, Gradville Sharp, all of them. The fact that no insurance was paid out, I think, was like a moral victory, right? Because for these activists, this is a case of moral justice versus commercial law, and an opportunity to showcase the massacre of hundreds of African human beings as murder.
Yeah.
So the case, I think, weakened the normalization to dehumanize Africans. And I think it strengthened within the British society the moral compass. And so, of course, there was no prosecution of Gregson for murder, right? But nevertheless, it is quite clear. This is 1783.
Yes.
If you look across the Caribbean, you see how many wars of resistance we know of. Between 1783 and 1831-32. I mean, 1824, we know that one in Hanover.
Yes.
We know 1824 1823 in Guyana, 1831 in Antigua, but there were so many across the region. It became unstoppable.
Yes.
The fight for redress, the fight to end the trafficking was unstoppable. And that's why in 1807, Britain was forced to pass the act which said no more trafficking in enslaved Africans. But what I find so hypocritical is how Britain acted after that. As if they were the great anti-slavery nation. And then having ships patrol the seas to seize slavers owned by other nations that were active in the trafficking of enslaved Africans. We know it was an economic reason for that.
Yes.
They didn't want the competition because now they're not using enslaved Africans in the same way. In other words, they don't have the supply. So they are like the moral compass of everybody else going and seizing slavers using their navy. But what was happening in Jamaica at the same time?
That's the point. What was happening in these so-called British territories and in where Britain had now when slavery was still happening, wasn't it?
Exactly. And after 1807, they turned on women. If you think about it, women became the price of enslaved African women went up. They now used African women both for production and reproduction, trying to still have slavery, but they know they couldn't buy any more from Africa. So women now were looked upon now as these carriers and reproducers of the enslaved population, and they refused. This is what we know from history, that no matter how they increased the rations for women, started to give them better diet, making those who were a certain age free, the women of reproductive age resisted through the womb. They never wanted to collaborate with the plan of the British to have them bear the burden of reproducing the enslaved population. And so slavery took another turn.
What a depraved thinking.
Yes.
It's hard to even wrap my head around.
Yes.
But this is what happened. Let us go then, Prof, to... All right, so I hear you making that connection between that publicity and that outrage, public outrage about what happened on the Zong and how that further impacted a public response to slavery. So there's a direct connection, you're saying, to abolition and then and also to resistance. Okay.
In Britain. It never stopped in the Caribbean, but it intensified in Britain, because when, church groups and so on were confronted by this kind of brutality and immorality, a lot of women, British women, became more involved in the whole campaign and so on. So now you have a joined-up movement, a more intense joined-up movement between what is happening in the Caribbean and what is happening. And so the fight now turns towards complete abolition of chattel slavery.
Yes.
So it was the only stepped-up action to end the trafficking, but that morphed into the intensification of the fight to end the system itself. But I want to make 2 points, Kabu, if you allow.
Go ahead.
I want to go back to the way in which the British Navy was patrolling the seas to capture those slavers owned by other countries, or even by the British themselves, individuals who were going against the law of their own country to stop it. For me, and I think those who are able to should go to slavevoyages.org. Just put that in your search engine and look at what happened when the ships were seized near the coast of Africa. When they were seized, they had to be put ashore at Sierra Leone. And they were taken to court in Sierra Leone to explain why they were involved in the shipping, and they had to declare who were on board. This is when we have seen the largest number of names of our enslaved Africans and directly where they were coming from. It is an appalling bit of evidence. If you see the age, they have to say the gender, where they came from, where they were going, what are their names, and what are their ages.
Yes.
Kabu, I shed tears when I saw the first list.
Wow.
When you see the ages, 2-year-olds,
Yes.
3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, so between 2 and 18. And then when you look at the adults, 70-year-old women, 65-year-old men. Think of your grandmother, right? What were they doing? But you see, they were going further and further south to capture. They were capturing just anyone who they could find because they had to make a quick shipment to make a profit and get out. So that's further evidence that gives us names, ages, and where in Africa they exactly were picked up from. This is a resource for all schools.
Yes, and I really do hope that schools, young people, and adults, so you're listening, please go to the site. But also to say, Puff, so all this information that is there on that side, but also what we know, what we have learned from the what we've discussed this morning from the Zang. How does all of that feedback now into the claims for reparations?
Yes, well, you say that we really need to have the children knowledgeable about this issue, and also about how reparation is linked into this. And I want to remind everyone, the teachers, the students, the adult students as well, who are not in school but who want this information. The Center for Reparation Research has done a book called Introduction to Reparation for Secondary Schools, published by the University of the West Indies Press, and it was written by myself and my assistant Gabrielle Hemmings. This is on the market, and this is a simple way of looking at all of including what I've just said this morning. I also wanted to stress that the brutality of the Zang did not cause the British to have any conscience about their actions in the Caribbean afterwards, because you know that from the 27th of December, we're going to be thinking about the over, like 1,000 or so, either killed or punished otherwise or deported because of the final Emancipation War, 1831-32, led by Samuel Sharp. We also know that even after the so-called emancipation, the brutality, the racism never stopped in Jamaica. 1865 happened. 1930s happened. So we need to be realistic about the history of colonialism, what it entailed, and why it is today we're saying, for all that we now know, we need to intensify the call for reparatory justice, because these tragedies cannot go unaccounted for, and somebody has to take responsibility for what happened. So there are many reparation committees across the Caribbean. In Jamaica, we have our own National Council on Reparation. Back in 2007, so we go now to what have we done? What have we done to memorialize the victims of this Zang? 2007, I was chair of the Bicentennial Committee. You had your In Search of series. We were doing a lot to memorialize. Through storyboards, through plaques, through public education, your program. These stories that should not go away from our consciousness. The Bicentenary Committee, the Jamaica National Heritage Trust, the Institute of Jamaica, the Ministry of Culture at the time, collaborated on putting up a modest monument. Yes, we know it's modest, in Black River, around the same place where our ancestors would have walked off that ship, and across the road to be sold. So on that spot, there is a modest monument. I'm asking the people of Black River and the whole St. Elizabeth to protect it. I know the ministry, the current minister, has plans, and also the MP for that area, Fort Greene, to make a more impressive monument and to have a landscape space. I wish them all the luck in what they're trying to do. I know the names disappeared. They were re-etched, however, by the ministry and associated agencies some years ago. But I know that people keep sending me photographs of what it looks like and saying, you know, for such a huge tragedy, we need something else. We need a whole space.
Yes.
And the storyboard to be put back, because we did put a storyboard in 2007.
Yes.
But memorializing in tangible ways, I think, is important. Maybe you and I can impress on Brother Bird to write a play.
I thought about that, you know. I thought about that in preparing for this program, that this is one of the plays.
Because I'm saying that we have to find creative ways to put this information into the public space. We do our best through these types of media, but everybody can get on board and do what they can.
And just to say to persons who are listening, because we know people... Exactly. We know people are listening from all over the world this morning. I'm getting the messages. I'm seeing you and I'm hearing you. I just saw that just to say, wherever you are, talk about this in the spaces in which you occupy, the platforms that you have, whether it's a social media, microphone, music, art, whatever it is. Talk about this tragedy, this murderous act that happened, and talk about how we can memorialize this. And
the schools also can put on plays.
Yes,
you know?
Yes.
On Jamaica Day, they all have Jamaica Day. They can do something creative.
Let us remember.
With this information.
Professor Shepherd, thank you so much. We could not have let this moment, this time, every year this time. When I think about the fact that all of this happened in Caribbean waters, I am still trying to come to terms with it. I'm telling you that I'm in a place this morning. We've had this conversation from time to time, you and me, but every time I'm not going to hide it. I'm just not feeling good. You know.
No, neither am I. It's too, the burden, if you care, the burden is great to bear. And when historians have to be confronted in their research with these, the violence just comes up on you from the pages of the archives.
Yes.
The enslavers kept good records, by the way. Some were destroyed, but a lot have been kept in the National Archives of Britain and in other county archives. I've had to make that trek. I've looked at evidence in the Jamaica archives, in the National Library of Jamaica. It makes you sick, a lot of this. But what can you do? Historians have a responsibility to research and educate.
And we have a responsibility to stand up with historians and others who are doing this to call for, without apology, reparations.
Yes,
to stand
and
up in our
apology
spaces.
has three dimensions. It takes responsibility. It admits to the crime. It commits to non-repetition, and it commits to repair. So apology is not just saying I'm sorry.
Yeah, I meant without my apology. Yes, that I'm not apologizing for calling for reparations.
I know what you said, but I also wanted to piggyback on the issue of apology.
Yes, okay.
To make that point, because I think people keep saying, "Oh, this one has apologized. This one say I'm sorry. This one," and say I regret.
Yes.
But in terms of Jamaica and the move for reparations, we need to intensify it and ensure that we don't let people off the hook. People can't just come into our space and grin with us, and we roll out the red carpet, and those people don't even take responsibility.
Yeah,
You know?
we see so much happening on the island now in terms of even the way that it appears that government is collaborating and colluding in the way that some collaborated and colluded with the enslavers, with the oppressors and the colonizers, the former colonizers, in terms of the lack of access, for example, to beaches, land ownership, those issues that we still are facing, some of these very same issues from colonial times, and we can, and I dare say from slavery. So
yes, what we are seeing in our country is a worrying level of pro-colonialism and a lack of education about the relationship between the way things are in Jamaica and the colonial period. And so unless you have an anti-colonial philosophy and worldview, then you will continue to be disconnected from how you repair our society, because there is internal repair, there's a way in which you can take internal responsibility while still calling on the former colonial powers to do what is right. But we have to understand that the legacies of colonialism are strong. We're not teaching history in our schools to everyone. And if you don't know your history, then you act in ways we are seeing in Jamaica, unacceptable ways, is how I would like to end.
Oh boy, Professor, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your work.
It's available because history is important.
Much appreciated.
It explains the present, and we have to keep going back to history.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you, Kabu.
All right, have a good rest of the day.
Okay, you too.
All right, so that was my chat with Professor Vereen Shepherd, our conversation 2 years ago. Every year for the longest while, way back as 2006, I've been having, around this time, I have this conversation about, and to devise a way to ensure that it doesn't happen again. This is important. At the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, we're looking at the whitening and the neocolonizing of Jamaica. We're looking at those who are in leadership positions, members of parliament, politicians, ministers of government, board chairmen and women. We're looking at the makeup of Jamaica in terms of those who are the so-called ruling class. And we're seeing a whitening of Jamaica, an unapologetic whitening of Jamaica. This is happening under our noses. And it is so egregious that it is not even a situation where the person is just brown. It is a complete whitening of Jamaica. So when we talk about two Jamaicas, we're wrong. It's quite a few Jamaicas. But that 1% that represent the planter class, the white planter class that is retaking Jamaica, we're looking at that on this December 22, the anniversary of the landing of the slaver, the Zong, in St. Elizabeth. We're looking at that in this December, just a few days before Baba Sam Sharp and them got together to lead a war against slavery and a war for emancipation. And we're looking in this December and listening to these white ones, the planter class, telling us that it don't make no sense we celebrate emancipation because that's not necessary. We're listening to them telling us to discard the celebration of our freedom from their ancestors' enslavement of our ancestors. And we're seeing the buy-in and the support of that blasphemous suggestion by those who are dressed in black skins but are representative of the white planter class, the house slave mentality. It has to end with us in 2024. We must reclaim ourselves through reparation, repatriation, decolonizing of the curriculum, a decolonization of the mind, a decolonization of our spaces. And we must see that effort coming from the very top with the support of every single one of us, or else we will find ourselves overboard again. Shackles on our feet. On this December 22, if I leave here today and want to go to the sea, if I leave here today and want to go on a beach, if I leave here today and want to go enjoy the freedom that our ancestors fought so hard for, I cannot. It's illegal. And unless I break their laws, I cannot access a beach anywhere in this area. Anywhere. We're in Ocherius. This is our reality. It is what it is. It is what it is. It has to stop with us. It has to stop with us. It must stop with us. I don't know, but we cannot go into another decade. We cannot go into another year as we are today. I hope that for all of us, that we can reflect, even in this time of celebrations and merriment. We can remember that today, December 22, marks the 243rd memorial of the arrival of the British slaver, the Zong, on Jamaica's soil. Sorry that we can't. Well, I'm not sorry. But there are times when we have to call ourselves to order. And for me, 2024 is that time when we as Africans, if we have never done it before, must call ourselves to order. The changes are happening. At the beginning of this program, at 6 o'clock, we started off by talking about what happened in France a few weeks ago, the reopening of Notre Dame. And we told you that everything is connected. And we're looking now at what the Pope of Rome is about to do, which is to open 5 portals. They do open these portals every 25 years, which is true. This year it's different because they're opening a portal that has never been opened before, and they're not hiding it from us. So we are paying attention to the rituals that they are engaged in. And then we must begin to ask ourselves, where do we fit in all of what's happening around us as African people? The masses of the Jamaican people continue to be under oppression. This we're very clear about. This we're sure about. This we know without apology. We're seeing, don't think because I didn't talk about them this morning that I'm not aware of all the changes that have been happening. Changes coming out of JAMP, because JAMP has retracted the word from monies that are unaccounted for to, what's the word that JAMP is using now? JAMP is using not unaccounted for, but there's another word they're using. If you put those 3 words together, missing, unaccounted for, then the word that JAMP is using now, it all means the same. There are slight differences. But it really doesn't make any difference whether the money the point of the matter is the money has not come in. The money cannot be found. So something is wrong. We're also aware of the murders we're seeing. We've been talking about the TikTokers who are being murdered on their lives. We're seeing the last one, pretty gory. And we maintain and reiterate the call that there has to be some kind of monitoring of the TikTok spaces. There has to be, whether we like it or not. It is what it is. The crime and the violence moving from the social media into the reality, into the real spaces. That is a fact. We have to deal with the isness of things. Australia has done something. We can do this very same thing. Let us look at the Australia model. Court ruling and all of that, and so much more. So we're aware of everything that's happening around us. But this morning, our focus was on the Zong. And here we are. So we're making way for the Big A inside of this Sunday sunshine. Big A is back from his very, very long holiday. And we want to welcome him back. Right. Welcome back, Big A.
A very long holiday, you know.
Oh, you mean, if you're out for more than 2 days, that's very, very long. Extremely long. I'm not used to it. Right. So I see you.
I don't get it.
You don't get it?
I've only been missing from this space for one
Yes.
Sunday.
For one Sunday?
For one.
That's one Sunday too long.
So,
That's one Sunday too long. Yeah.
A very long holiday.
And that is not to say that your mentee didn't do a great job, excellent job. I was very happy to see him come in. Romain.
Oh.
Right?
You mean collision?
Yes, let me yeah. Oh yeah. When he works on a Sunday, he's Romain.
Oh.
Right.
In the very same breath. When I work on a Sunday, I have
You're Ainsworth. There you go. So he's Romain when he works on a Sunday. So collegian did a very, very good job. And but you were missed. And it's a very long time. It's one Sunday too many. So how was the cruise?
It was good, as always.
Just that?
No, it was.
You know, I'm nothing else to say.
you know, we are spoiled, as a people.
Yes.
That when you're accustomed to a high standard all the time, you speak of it in very casual terms. Mm-hmm. You know, like when a child gets
take it for granted, yes.
Yeah, when a child gets 100 all the time,
Mm-hmm.
you know, say, yeah, all right, all right, so
yeah.
you know what I mean?
That's true.
That's true. It is kind of like that, as opposed to when somebody is a 50% person or 60% person, all of a sudden they score 90, and you say, wow!
Right, that is the way of the world.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly how it goes.
So probably that.
So you're falling off a form.
So that is.
You have to maintain the level.
Yeah, probably that is it.
We can't put up with it.
It is excellence without apology, but because it is consistent excellence, maybe I have underplayed it.
Yes, you take it for granted.
I take it for granted.
So,
but it is as always.
Where exactly did the ship go? I mean, because Muta was on my program on Thursday. On my program,
Oh,
Muta was on the phone lines on my program on Thursday for a good half an hour, right? And he said he was like in his hotel in Ocho.
Yeah, well, the Welcome to Jamrock cruise makes 2 stops in Jamaica on every cruise. It is either in Montego Bay and Ochi or Falmouth and Ochi.
Okay.
But it always includes Ocho.
Right. So where it go? Ochi? Well,
it is
Miami?
Florida, Florida, Montego Bay, Ochi, Florida.
Then what kind of cruise on?
That's an awesome cruise for those who don't get the opportunity.
The one about Trinidad and Barbados and all them places.
No, it's called Welcome to Jamrock.
Oh. But remember, Jamaica is everywhere. I'm going to give you an idea for the next cruise. We Jamaicanize. Yes.
No, me.
Oh, no. We Jamaicanize where we go. You're Damien and them.
No.
We Jamaicanize where we go.
Listen. It is the very same way that people criticize Irish for not playing hip hop.
But who said we not play hip hop?
No, and country and western.
We play hip hop, but we
and
call it
R&B.
something else. Because you know something, and you play country and western. Stop it. But we play country. When we define country and western and contextualize it, it becomes reggae.
Well, I don't.
No
know
matter
about
what
it.
instruments they're playing. But when we finish contextualize it and define it, it is what it is. It is what we say it is.
No, I'd better subscribe to that. Better subscribe to that.
Well, listen, I just play Cynthia Erivo.
Right.
What you call that?
I didn't listen.
Okay.
I didn't listen. But
Well.
you know what I mean?
And if you give me Shabuzi right now, I'm play.
You play.
Yes.
Yeah?
But I'll contextualize it though. I have to reggaeize it with my words.
That don't make it reggae.
Biggie, we're powerful like that, you know.
No, that no make it.
We're not that powerful.
No.
What is reggae? What is reggae?
It depends on how you choose to define it.
No, you define it for me. Cause me tell you how me define it. Me just contextualize it and put it in
anything can be reggae for you.
No.
So we can take Chopin and we can take
No,
we can take Bach.
not that man. That's why I say no.
We can take Bach and
No.
and Mozart and,
And Beethoven and them.
I was say a reggae that.
No, but remember, you know, Sunday Morning Coming Down was a song that used to be the theme song for this program. Who reggaeized it?
Ernest Smith.
Bob Clark. He wasn't the Ernest Smith version I did play.
Well, I don't know.
Bob Clark just put a tape down and put in the drum with him hand. He just beat the tape.
But not everything had that luxury. Not all music.
No, but I'm saying, but we regularized Sunday Morning Coming Down, and that was a theme for years.
No, as I said.
I wake up Sunday morning with no place to lay my head. So,
No.
You know the song? It did, you know?
No, man.
Sunday Morning Coming Down.
Sunday Morning Coming Down was.
Yeah, the Ernie Smith version. Yes, it's true. And then I called Ernie and asked him if I could use his version as a theme, and he said yes.
So as I said, not all music forms.
So what is reggae? What is reggae, Biggie? What is reggae?
It all depends on
the drum and the bass?
No, it is hard to define in one word at this point.
Okay.
But it is a.
Is it definable?
It is a unique. If it is definable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it's going to take not just a sentence or two to define it.
What is reggae wear? Because you have reggae wear and you have reggae chicken. And you have all kind of things with reggae in front of it, you know.
Right. So what is reggae chicken?
It's the same thing that reggae is.
Eh? No, but regular chicken.
We cannot describe reggae chicken until we define reggae.
Right.
I mean, we understand what chicken is, that is a bird.
Yeah.
But until we define what reggae is, we will not know what reggae chicken
What
is.
reggae? So tell me what reggae is to you.
No, but I tell you already. You're just not buying it. You're not buying it.
That's anything.
No, I never said that. I said Beethoven and Chopin and Bach and all of them. Not.
So what
they can be reggaeized.
So what would make them excluded from the reggae or reggaeization according to you? But country and western and the rest of the other musical forms.
So Country Road by Toots is what?
He has reggaeized it.
Well, no, that.
No, so I'm saying.
We can reggaeize these things.
Reggae essentially is a beat. Is a unique beat with a particular sound.
Right, okay, a beat with a sound. That's exactly. And remember, with a sound, a particular sound. So what is sound?
What do you mean, what is sound? What do you mean? What is sound? Sound is a waveform that meets the ear. I mean, that's
so if you hear it, does it have to be heard for it to be a sound, or can it be a sound even if you're not hearing it?
You ask the paradoxical question now. If a tree falls in that forest,
does it make a sound? Because you might not hear. Because if reggae is beat and sound, and then if you not hearing the sound when me play the country and western, but me hear it, is it reggae? If you're not hearing the sound of reggae, is it reggae?
if you're not hearing it.
Because you know, I mean, you the individual not hearing it. Not everybody not hearing it. You the individual. If you don't hear the sound, you know, but I am hearing it.
What would cause you not to hear it?
But that's the point, because you already figure say it is not reggae, so you're not hearing the sound that I am hearing.
No, me not already figure that it is not reggae.
No, you say it's on a reggae. You say country western on a reggae.
No, but question. No, so you are hearing reggae in country western?
Of course.
That is your story?
And I'm sticking by it. That is what I'm going with, and I'm sticking by. I already lose this argument, you know, so I don't have nothing to lose anymore. I have publicly lost this argument, you know. I am just trying to save my skin right now.
Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton.
All of them. Yes.
What's the one with the big hat name?
Big Johnny Cash and Toby Keith and Brooks and Shabuzi.
All of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just tell them, say, I reckon this.
Big iron on his hip.
Eh?
And I reckon that.
It is? It is?
But remember, you know.
When Josie will do it, is reggae.
See, Ian, right? You know, thank you, Ian, for being on my side. Ian said, but sure say that about my side, no, but I'm already taking it. He says, hey, on the upon levels, we love it. Life is a definition. And the conundrum, something we know, but now battle struggle to define what a thing. So, Ian, you don't define nothing. You don't say nothing. You always are me. You have said nothing. So you know, so you're a Taurian. Because you just come muddy the waters. Anyway, so Biggie, no, you don't tell me what reggae is, you know, so we good.
No, I tell you that reggae is a sound.
What kind of sound?
It is a particular sound.
Make ask AI. Because, all right, it's a particular sound, and it uses particular instrument.
Not necessarily.
Right, so back on Beethoven, if you don't mind, shop, them a thing there, a reggae. Because if you hear reggae, now that may I say, because reggae is so powerful and so wide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, and it's not country and western.
Well, what is country and western? I'm asking AI, what is reggae? What is reggae? If it's a reggae music, it'll give me a problem. So I say, what is reggae? So it says reggae is a genre of music that originated in Jamaica in the late 1960s. It is characterized by a distinctive rhythmic style, often featuring offbeat rhythms, bass-heavy sound, lyrical focus, and subgenres include roots reggae, dancehall reggae, dub reggae. Not even AI, I don't know.
Yes, sir.
AI, I don't know.
So that does not qualify.
No, it don't tell what it says.
No, I'm asking. Based on what you are understanding.
It not define nothing. What's it define?
I did say it is a song.
All right, then. We're going to leave it there. Reggae, be it known, let it be known. You remember the other used to come parade and say, tonic wine? You remember the tonic wine ad? Someone I say it's a tonic. No, I say it's a wine. Right. I say it's a tonic. I say it's a wine. Right. Which ad was that again?
I can't remember.
Anyway, I don't think it's Red Label. Oh, it's Red Label? Red Label is I say Red Label is a tonic. No, you say it's a wine. It's tonic wine. No, Red Label.
Or is it Stones?
Queer now. You see that now? I'm telling you, we're not going to agree upon nothing.
I don't remember. I honestly don't remember.
We are not going to agree on anything. Suffice to say, I'm very happy to see you. Welcome back.
I am happy to see you too.
What was the highlight of the cruise?
Well, there are many highlights in my book. The performances, the performances were, it's always the top of the pile. Mm-hmm. But the camaraderie between the guests, the passengers on the cruise, is just one for the ages. Mm-hmm. It is, it's like one big family. Everybody is like, I know you from a long time, even though I'm just seeing you for the first time. Mm-hmm. And everybody was just easy to talk to. Everybody was, sharing information, sharing the same space, that kind of thing. And then the performances just, tipped it over the top.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Andrew Lumsden says reggae is anything released by a Marley for Grammy consideration. Andrew, reggae is anything released by a Marley for Grammy consideration. I agree.
No, but But listen, that is nonsense. Because
you must apologize to Andrew.
No. But let me ask him to let me ask him to tell me then.
Yes.
Why didn't Steve Marley's Old Soul qualify for the Reggae Grammys last year?
That's because you're misunderstanding his point.
No. Him say anything released by the Marleys.
Right.
And I'm saying to you, it was released.
Okay. What was the reason? What was the reason given? What was it? Why? Why didn't? What was the reason? It wasn't reggae?
Apparently. But it was a beautiful album. One of the best albums.
Let me ask you, is it reggae?
Not entirely. Not entirely in my book.
Arlene,
but him say anything, him say anything based on this definition. That means that anything that him put out would have been qualified as reggae. But it was not qualified. Also, it was shunned from the Grammys last year.
Jimmy Cliff's Many Rivers to Cross is what?
Is a ballad.
It's reggae because we say it a reggae.
So anything you say.
Anything. This is not.
Anything you say.
Let me tell you already,
Anything
say,
you say.
Anything IRFM says reggae is reggae.
So we are the arbiters.
We define reggae.
We are the arbiters of what? Reggae,
yeah, man.
of what reggae is.
We define reggae. All right. So Arlene says, "Greetings, Sister Queen. I'm listening. Just a little quiet. I had the same argument when Just Tone won the Reggae of the Year." So if IRFM says not reggae, no matter how much drum and bass in there, it's not reggae.
Right.
It's dancehall.
No. Hold on.
We determine is what it is.
Hold on, man.
We can't get to go at the power from me.
No. I'm not taking away the power from you.
Not from me, from Irie, big bad Irie.
I just want to ask that.
Yes.
All I know.
Yes.
She had the Just Stone conversation,
right.
But we never said Just Stone was reggae.
No, she said she had that argument when Just Stone won the Reggae of the Year.
Right, but we know right. So and Irie never says reggae.
No, we said it was reggae. We were playing it.
Just Stone.
Yes.
Oh, you were playing it?
I don't know. But somebody. Biggie, you cannot ask these pointed questions. You must know when to stop.
No.
You cannot pinpoint.
You invent your truth as you go along.
No, it's not the truth I'm inventing. I speak truth to power. I'm not inventing the truth.
No, you just invent these things as you go along.
No.
So, you're a good brethren and you're a good sister.
I'm not a politician. I just suffer the consequences. So we did some. Oh, we're gonna draw a line under this. We define reggae. I mean, if you play it and say reggae is reggae, me know what gonna be here because you're like a purist now, and you want, and you know say your virgin them a listen, and you don't want nobody call you and draw you up about this thing. But if we say it's reggae, it's reggae.
I'm not a purist.
You are a purist.
And you know better than that, more than anybody else.
You're a purist.
I have taken more chances on this station playing music that people consider out of the box more than anybody else.
True, I must agree with that.
With the exception of probably Muta.
True, I must say that. But you have to put. So to me. So to me.
So don't put me in the purist box.
So when we're playing Seal and saying it's reggae, was it reggae?
Which one of the Seal though?
All of them.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Muta, are you you see because me and Muta play black music. Black music is reggae.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So we say it's reggae. It's reggae.
Okay.
Aretha Franklin. Beyonce.
It's reggae.
All the single ladies.
Yeah. Listen to me now. I'm not going to go down that road with you.
We reggae. My thing is, if we say because we cannot define reggae, not even AI can define reggae. That's how powerful reggae is. So,
but why is it that they can't define it though? You just don't want to abide by their definition.
It's on like a definition there.
No, well. It is. It is by whatever standard you want to measure it by. It is a definition. Whether you want to agree with the definition or not, it is a definition.
I'll have this conversation with you another time.
Maybe not an absolute one, but it is a definition.
I'll have this conversation with you another time, and I'd just like to say welcome back again. And it's just because I'm looking at the clock and I know you have work to do, so I'm going to go. And we're going to come back to what is reggae. In the meantime, if you have an idea or a definition of reggae, please send me. Thank you so much. All right, Biggie, walk good. No, have a good program. I take your time signal.